Okay.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Hi guys. Okay, so we had to meet
hi.
on Zoom today
Yeah.
because I'm having illness in our house. So it was easier, plus other things. I mean, my daughter's not feeling well, and then my
Yeah.
husband's having some dental work. So my house was
Yeah.
full and sick. So we just
Yeah.
decided to try the Zoom thing again. So
Yeah. And it seemed to work okay last time.
yeah,
It's just a little longer, but
longer and it's a little more like in the flow of how we normally talk so that who
exactly.
knows what we'll cover. We're just going
Right.
to kind of let the conversation happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Which is fun. I mean, like we were just talking about just being a little more authentic and flowing. And I've also been thinking that as well, because I was talking to my mom yesterday about so much stuff, but a lot of stuff that I've kind of had some ahas again this week. I'm not called the hare for nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
you're just going.
just
Okay.
not stop.
No.
Um, but just thinking about me when I was growing up and um, I don't know how to frame it, but how I saw myself, how I was in relationships with others, friends, parents, siblings, all of it, and how I couldn't show up authentically because I didn't know who I was. I was trying to be this perfect person because I had been shown over and over from my dad and my stepmom, not to bash them, not to blame them, but that I was kind of shown over and over that my feelings, who I was not okay.
Right.
Meaning, if I felt, that I didn't want to interact with her or talk with her or even be at their house, that didn't matter. You're a child, you obey, basically, and this is my house, and you walk in here and you need to be polite, you need to do da 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 da. And I always thought I was trying to be, but then I could never meet that expectation. And so I was then what's the word? I can't think. Reconfirm. I don't even know the word, but like my dad would kind of show that to me then by saying, well, you're not being polite, you're being ungrateful, you're being this and that, because he's hearing it from his wife, my stepmom. So that was kind of that first initial, like, no, you can't be yourself. You can't have those feelings that are yours because they're wrong. And then, going into school and having to change schools and go to the middle school. And of course, that's a crazy time for everybody in middle school, those middle years, and not knowing who I am there because everything's changing and my family was just blown up and all that kind of stuff. And then not doing well in school. And so I'm always trying to achieve this perfection of a person, but it doesn't exist. So my whole life
changing depending on who
what's
you're
that?
talking. It's always changing depending on who you're talking to or who you're with or what the circumstance. It's like, how do you keep up with it? How do you keep up with the rules of what's perfect and what's,
I know.
real?
And as I was talking to my mom yesterday, she said, do you think that had a lot to do with your health issues? And I said, absolutely. Because, and I was trying to think about this the other day because I met a friend for lunch and thinking about how I usually have a lot of anxiety when I go meet one-on-one with a friend because I'm always worried about what we're going to talk about. If there's going to be a lull in the conversation, you and I talked about this a lot. Just always thinking that there has to be this event, this thing, and then me having to show up as this perfect person that doesn't exist because I didn't know who I was. And then I thought, okay, this whole time I'm interacting with somebody, it's an energy exchange. And what I think I've done my whole life is taken on that person's energy and tried to make it so that, oh, here, this is what they're saying. So how can I respond in a way that they would like, instead of showing up authentically and saying like, oh, I don't really agree with that, or that's not how I feel, but I would never be able to say that because I was afraid they wouldn't like me or that it was wrong that I had those feelings. So it's exhausting. It is exhausting. It's painful, and it doesn't go anywhere. Like, what have I gained? What have I learned from that is that I don't know who I am. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be this perfect person that doesn't exist.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, like, awesome insights, and it's connecting 100 different dots for me as far as my own experiences, and just, how difficult it is. And we feel we need to, like when you're talking about that energy exchange, we do feel like we need to show up and mirror the energy. And sometimes that is not the best gift we can give to another. And when we don't know ourselves, it just kind of continues the, like where they're lost or where they're not seeing things.
Yeah.
We just kind of like mirror it back to them, regurgitate that, and they stay lost. They don't get anything from it. And we don't get anything from it.
Right.
And
it's the agreeing part. I mean, when you agree, it's like, it's trying to keep everybody comfortable, but is that the best thing? Is keeping everybody comfortable? And me, it was always like, oh yeah. No, I don't want anybody not to like me. No, I have to be agreeable,
Yeah, the conflict is the absolute worst outcome you can have. Like, that's how I am too. It's just, as a people pleaser, you're looking to avoid conflict. What you value is when things are peaceful.
Yeah. And so it's this facade, and it's this false front where it's not really doing anything but making it more uncomfortable, because you just don't know who you are, and then you can't really know the other person either, because if you're just agreeing all the time, who's being pushed, who's being nudged, who's growing in that moment? If you're just agreeing, there is no growth there. And then
it's a false sense of peace, right?
Yes, like, that's what I was trying to say. Yes.
Let me get the peace on the 3D level, which is like, we are not arguing, therefore this is what peace is.
Right.
Like, no, because then you lose yourself. Mm-hmm. You're feeling not at peace because you don't understand who you are. You can't speak up. You don't know what your voice is. You don't know what your truth is. So you kind of stolen your own peace just to create this illusion of the 3D piece, and it's just,
that's so true. And because that's absolutely right, because we're trying to take this 5D perspective, if you will, and push it into a 3D situation, and it doesn't work. And so it's finally now like, now I have to sit and actually feel the uncomfortable feeling of there's a lull in the conversation, or there's something that the other person said that I don't necessarily agree with. And this is where I think I had a hard time with speaking my truth. And now I get to practice it over and over again, which is really fun. But I was just afraid of even saying my truth, kind of going back to my childhood, which was, you're not allowed to have those feelings. Those feelings are not valid, even though they were mine and I felt them. It was like, no, you're not allowed to have them. So now when I'm in a situation and someone's saying something and I don't necessarily agree with it, I can then approach it as, there's nothing wrong with the way you feel about this, but I don't feel that way. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it also came up too with the situation with my husband and my mother-in-law when we were at Miraval that weekend, and seeing what's happening between the two of them, their interaction with each other. Not that it was wrong, but for me, it did not resonate with me at all. And I was really kind of confused at the moment, being like, okay, why am I having this feeling? I don't like this. This is not, I should like this. I shouldn't care. But at the same time, it's not about caring. It's more about, you need to validate and honor your feelings. And it's okay that what you're seeing is not resonating with you. Not that they're wrong, not that they're bad, not that you can blame them, because that doesn't get you anywhere. But that this is my truth. This is how I feel, and it's okay. And then having to give that to myself over and over and over again, and that's what I'm practicing, is that my feelings are valid. and they are okay. And it doesn't matter if the other person likes it or not. That's that uncomfortable piece, right? Whereas maybe if they don't like it, that's their time to grow. Just like it's my time to grow, right?
For sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's so perfect. I was talking with a friend today. We were talking about this exact same thing.
Really?
Yeah, because she was really struggling in her job and with her boss.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, I'm going to stay there. I'm going to stay at this job to be kind because I thought it was the kind thing to do." Meaning she is not resonating with going to work. She does not like being around this person. This person creates conflict. Oh. And it's like, wait. You are not enjoying this. How is it kind to let her continue to perpetrate and to steal joy from people? Like, yeah. And you're not the only one that experiences this around this person. Now, do we have to blame that person? No. We don't have to say you're wrong, you should be fired, whatever. Right. But if we don't step up and be courageous and say, you know what, I'll come back when I'm having to work with this person because I'm not enjoying my work when they are the way they are. It's very abusive and fearful and controlling. Yeah. And I'll not be in this situation. I mean, we set up boundaries, and when we do that, when we speak our truth, when we put our boundaries up and say, I will not be treated this way, or that's not my truth, I'm not going to walk with you on that path. Right. That is the best gift we can give another.
Well, like you were just
to do with it, that's for them.
Right. And like you were just saying, like, who's it being kind to? You're not being kind to that person because you don't really know what their whole agenda is. And you're definitely not being kind to yourself. So where's the kindness going?
Exactly.
Right? It's an illusion.
An idea of kindness. Right. It isn't really thought through and thought out. It's like, what does kindness actually mean? And by my definition, kindness is you show up authentically, you don't blame, you just say, this is my experience. Yeah. And because this is my truth, I'm going to go in this direction. You choose what you want. I respect you. I care about you. I want the best for you. Right. And this is the best for me.
And it just creates like we've talked about in the last couple of videos, it just creates a super calm, non-threatening, non-aggressive, not blaming situation. And it's just so clear. And then, but you have to be able to be clear. Like we've said before, we have to be able to be very clear with what our truth is. And what you said earlier about the boundaries, because I journaled about that this week about boundaries and just thinking about, I didn't know what my boundaries were. I didn't know what my truth was. And I'm still kind of learning that. But if we can't even authentically know what our boundaries are, there's no way another person is going to even remotely know how to deal with that. So they're just doing their thing. Like this woman's boss is doing her thing. She's not necessarily doing anything to her, but if she doesn't know her own boundaries and her own truth, she can't even authentically show up and say, this is how I'm feeling about this.
Right.
You know? So it's huge to be able to, as women, I think in general, is really knowing our boundaries and knowing that our feelings are absolutely valid and there's nothing wrong with them. And then being able to really sit with those feelings and if it is an uncomfortable or not even uncomfortable, but just a feeling where it doesn't resonate, that's 100% yours and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think boundaries are so key right now because there's this idea that, be it in parenting, be it in our politics, be it in our personal relationships, like that boundaries are cruel. Yeah. That boundaries infringe on other people, that you shouldn't set up clear boundaries because, you
might offend somebody.
Well, or even encroach on their rights. Encroach on what they want to do as a spirit and as a person. And, there's no boundaries. Everything's accepted. Everything's we're tolerant.
Right.
And I just think that's a misunderstanding of true kindness, true love, and true acceptance. Because I think we have to understand completely and fully what we need to grow and prosper and speak and love. And until we express that to another and say, this is my expectation for how I want to be treated. Yeah. It's a little bit of chaos. It's always a misunderstanding. There's always, like infringing on each other. You try to not have boundaries, to be like, no, I respect you. You do what you want. In the meantime, what it creates, and I think this is what we need to do. We need to look and see, what are you creating? I know the idea is kindness. I know the idea is respect, but is that what we're creating? Is that what you're creating in your home? Is that what we're creating in our world, in our country, in our relationships? If it's not, then we need to go back to the assumption and readjust. And I think it starts with boundaries, and really understanding super strong boundaries is one of the healthiest things we can do for each other.
Absolutely. And I've definitely had that experience this week as well, not just with my friend, but then with my husband, and thinking about, my value as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, and thinking that, not that my husband's a bad person, but the way our relationship has been set up, and you and I've talked about this before, is we teach people how to treat us. If I don't feel that I have value, if I don't feel that I have worth, or that I am good enough, well, even my husband won't be able to even validate that for me, because I can't show up authentically saying that I am these things or feel these things and then get upset with him when he doesn't even acknowledge that, So I, again, have to step into that very clear message and say to him, you want something from me from this end? Well, this is how I feel about this, and my feelings are okay. And if I say no, I say no. And you have to respect me enough to know that it's not about you. I still love you, but this is about me, and this is for me. And it's a really, really difficult thing, I think, for me in this moment in my life, in my marriage, because it's gone on for 16 years. That's just married life. We've been together for 18, but I'm now showing up authentically in this marriage, and it's difficult for him because he's now having to see, like, oh, I'm not really going to get away with this stuff anymore. I'm going to now, instead of him holding himself accountable, I'm having to hold him accountable, because I no longer will accept this negative, and I'll just say it because it's a blame thing. Again, there's nothing wrong with my husband. My husband's a very dear, nice person. However, in a marriage where there's this intimate relationship between a husband and wife, this blame, this shame, and not, I wouldn't say shame, but more the blame part of it. When there is any sort of blame that you're putting on your spouse, if that's what they see, no matter what, I don't know where I'm going with that, but really just the blame part of it. If they blame you for any little thing, it's going to show up. And for me, until I really understood clearly that I have value, I have worth, I am good enough, I don't need I can now stand up and say, you're going to blame me for this? Just 1 second. You're not going to blame me for this anymore. I'm sorry that you feel that way. It has nothing to do with me. And here's the reasons why. And if you are upset with me because you think I did something, that's now your turn to go do your work. Yeah. Because I no longer will put up with it.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's such a powerful conversation to show up in your marriage and not take the blame. Certainly responsibility, because whatever you find yourself in is both of you playing in a dance, right? But when someone starts to blame you and say, you're the reason I feel this way, or you're the reason we're like this, or whatever, to be able to step up and say, no, I'm sorry, that's not true. And own it and not feel guilty, not give in to the shame. But again, knowing who you are. I mean, we had that early on in our marriage, and a lot of it had to do with like weight shaming for me. The way that I looked, my husband's expectation for who he should have married as opposed to who he found himself with. And my whole life was really, that was a theme in my life, right? That was my own unworthiness showing up as my husband. And I had to then be like, wait a minute, no, I no longer accept that truth. You are pushing a narrative that I've believed most of my life. Right? Like I've believed this. I've believed my unworthiness. I've believed that I should be ashamed of my weight. I've believed that I don't deserve these things. And then when he said it to me just straight, it was like, no, I no longer accept that. These are my boundaries. And it's hard, right? I mean, it was a long process, but how freeing and empowering to no longer accept that blame, to own who you are, to own your worth. And always moving forward with that, clarifying that, getting better at expressing that. And now my husband is to the point where he's like, I am so grateful you knew yourself. I am so grateful that you held me accountable. And, you know, we can look back on those years, and he has apologized 150 times. And we've been through all of that process. We're in a completely different place now, but absolutely, it's the practicing the boundaries. It's practicing like, no, I don't accept that definition you're giving me. And I don't own that blame. That is for you. You need to look at yourself and understand why you make sense of it that way and why you're putting it on me, because that's not going to work anymore. And it's not useful for you. Again,
no,
it's like that abusive relationship where the biggest gift you can give to someone, and not saying that your husband's abusive or mine is, it's just no longer allow the abuser to do it, because it's just as bad for them too. And what you're doing is holding them accountable and saying, I'm sorry, that behavior is no longer acceptable. You can either run away from that and leave me, or you can stand here and realize that this is an opportunity for your growth.
Exactly.
And that is the scariest part, because you know that they could run in the other direction.
Oh yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because I want to say easily 2 months ago, we, you know, like you were saying, my husband and I have had this conversation many, many times over the last year. And, you know, when you were saying how you had felt that earlier in your marriage with your husband, I had also felt that, but I hadn't woken up yet to know, like, oh, okay, this is not acceptable. This is not okay. So I carried that with me for so many years, you know? And that's why, like, this whole year has been such an eye-opener, because I can finally know now when I see my husband interacting with his mom, and I have the feeling of, okay, this doesn't resonate with me. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to accept her. I don't have to have a relationship with her just because she's my mother-in-law. And their relationship, however it's set up, is fine. That's for them. But that doesn't mean I have to participate in it. I don't have to have anything to do with it. And I thought I did. So there's that blame again, you know, and then having my husband on top of that then validate and say, yeah, you are to blame,
right?
You know, is like, wait a second, you know, what is going on here? And so just getting so clear in the last week and saying, you know, I will no longer accept, and I'll bring it up because this is kind of how it happened so that maybe people can understand how simple it is, you know. The other day I had gone to the store and gotten a pan because we needed a new pan. We've had this red pan for years and it's chipping and it's yes, it's a good pan because nothing sticks to it. But I really been trying to like find better products for us to use at home. So I finally went to the store. I happened to find this pan and I was like, great, I'm going to go get it. I threw the other pan away. Well, my husband comes home and basically has a fit about it and is mad that I threw the red pan away and that this new pan is going to stick and why'd you do this and this and that, you know? So even though it was just this little thing, right, this pan, it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of the crux of it, where, and I kept asking him on Sunday, I kept asking, are you okay? Is everything fine? Like, what's going on? You seem a little distant. No, I'm good. I'm fine on this and that, you know? So again, I think I had to be really clear to be able to even say to him, you know, what was that whole thing about you getting upset with me about the pan? And he's just like, well, and he gets into his whole attitude again with
Billy jumps in and reveals why he's distant, right?
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, so yeah, we're not doing this anymore. And I said, you're going to go do the work on this because this has nothing to do with me. And I said, if you're blaming me because your egg stuck to the other pan, or you're blaming me because I threw the red pan away, that's the crux of it. It has nothing to do with the pan or the eggs.
Awesome.
You have a problem and you need to go fix it.
That gives me the chills, but yes. I mean, that is it. That is the process. I mean, that we've been working on in our marriage for so many years, where it's like, no, stop.
Yeah.
No, what are you creating right now? And it has nothing to do with me. Check yourself.
Yeah.
And just both of us doing that for each other is it changes the entire relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
You are requiring, you're changing your reality. You're coming from a different place, a more empowered place. Yes. Oh my gosh, that is awesome. How did
it was, he responded way better than I expected because, well, I don't know if it was way better than I expected, but every time he's done the work before, because he does the little app, the work app, when he does it, he just gets these revelations just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been blaming her. Oh my gosh, this is where it's coming from. This is why I'm upset, because my dad used to treat me like this when I did something wrong, whatever. And I said, see, I said, you're carrying all that stuff from childhood into our marriage. And I said, I've done it too. I'm guilty of it too. However, now we need to come to the place of, as adults, and me being very clear about my expectations and what I will allow and not allow, is now time for us to work on this. And we can do this as adults because we have the tools now. And when you come at me and say, you know, it's this, and this, it's like, okay, wait a second. What is it from your childhood that's bringing this up right now? And yeah, like you were saying, like most men would just leave. And I think that's what I was getting to, is like a few months ago, that was kind of his thing was, can't do this anymore. I'm not getting what I want. And you're the problem for not giving me what I want. And so I'm leaving. And I was like, hey, if that's how you feel, you think it's just this wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And just because you go out and make the money that I'm supposed to be this Stepford wife, I can't anymore. I won't. And he was just like, I don't know what to do with this. He's like, I want to be with you, but I can't. And so he was really struggling internally to figure out, well, I do love her and I want to be with her and I want to grow old with her, but she's now telling me I need to do this work, but I don't want to do it. So do I leave or do I stay? You know? And so the other night when I had the conversation with him, I said, are you still in? And he's like, yeah, I'm still in. I said, okay, then you have to do the work. It's not about me anymore. I know who I am. I'm going to call you out when you start blaming me for stuff. And it's going to be uncomfortable. But if you're still in, you have got to do the work yourself. I've done all my work. And yeah, I'm continuing to do my work. But I at least am making the effort to do that. And he was not, you know. But when he does, mind blown.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. I mean, and he has the mind blown. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, you know?
Yeah, and then it becomes clear to you why it's playing out that way in your relationship. And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, and I think the other piece is that it's really important to say your boundaries or say, no, I'm sorry, I won't allow you to treat me that way. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've said that exact phrase to my husband. It's not okay to treat me that way.
Wow.
And say it without anger.
Yeah.
Just with respect for yourself and respect for him.
Exactly.
Say, no, that's not good for either of us.
Yeah.
It's not okay to treat me that way. I think you want more for yourself and more for our relationship.
Yeah.
And can you stand up and say this right now? Because I have the vision for it, right? I mean, like, I have a vision for what we're creating, and that kind of blaming, that kind of scapegoating, it's not in the vision. It's not in the intimacy that we're trying to build. It's not in the partnership that I have the vision for. And so, that's one of the things that he's always been very appreciative of, and that I've always kind of known as the tortoise. I've always had the vision. It's just very slow and plodding to get there. Like, I've always kind of known, but that's where he's like, you just always knew what you were creating and what you were going towards. It's just a long road for me. It'll happen faster for you because you're just like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, because I didn't know all that stuff. I mean, I think obviously deep down in my subconscious, yes, and it was pushing me to that. But until I woke up, I didn't realize that that's what I was going to have to do, and do it very quickly. I couldn't do it 20 years.
It's very simple, right? You're just kind of speaking up for yourself. You're just saying, no, that behavior is not okay for what we're trying to create here.
Right.
It seems very simple, but it takes so much practice and so much nurturing and confidence. And it's hard not to doubt yourself.
Oh yeah. And it's, I think that's why I kind of felt it early on last year. And I was, because I remember the conversation I had with them. I'll always go back to that on July 4th weekend last year in 2020. And I remember it, he came out, I was sitting outside doing some meditation, and he came out, and I'll just bluntly say it, he wanted to have sex, and I said no. And he was just like, you never want to, this and that, and that led us into this great long conversation. And it was very clear to me that I told him, I don't want that type of relationship anymore. And I want you to be my partner in life. I want you to be with me on this journey. I don't want it to be, you need this from me, I need this from you, and this is how we do, it's, I can't do that anymore. So I was fairly clear at that moment. However, I didn't know how to implement that. I had so much work still to do to be clear with where I am now and say, when you say this to me, or this is how it happens, or this is how it kind of unfolded, now I can be clear and say, no. Remember when I talked about that before, about being a partnership? This is how we go forward, because you can't until you're clear on it.
Right.
You may have the feeling or the thought or the situation, the conversation, but until you're clear, it's really hard to make that next move and know where to go from there. So it takes time.
For sure. And I would say, just even as you're talking, I'm like, I'm still not done. Like, our marriage is still not done. We haven't reached my vision of what like I'm imagining is possible between a man and a woman, right? Like, I kind of understand what it's supposed to be, right? Like, spiritual connection and bring all of those pieces in.
Right.
So, like, not to be, not to bring everything down and be like, oh, there's still a long way to go. But it
is a journey.
It's a journey, and it's a process. And I kind of feel like I'm not sure we'll ever get there, but it certainly is very fulfilling to get closer and closer every year.
Absolutely.
And I think this is the process of, like, if you start down this road in your marriage of really holding each other accountable and healing and looking to be true partners mentally, physically, and spiritually, every year it gets better. And so it's okay. It's enough. It's enough to keep you going. It's enough to get you, keep you hopeful and keep doing the work and all of that stuff. So we're not even close to there, but I'm just saying.
Oh, I absolutely 100% agree. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, our conversations, my husband's, my conversations are so much more grown up, so much more clear, and we accomplish so much more in the conversations because of all the growth we've made. Yeah. And like you said, I don't know if this necessarily means that my husband and I will be together. I don't know, because it may show that, he has this growth and he's going to do his own thing and holding himself accountable. It may show something different, or maybe we aren't supposed to be together. And this is kind of like this whole point up until now was, hey, this is what we had to do. If it's not, great. If it is, great. I mean, honestly, I had to be okay with either way. And then I think that that's also helped us to now have these conversations where it's like, we're not pussyfooting around anymore. We're really getting serious.
Right.
And it can't go on any longer the way it was going, because it wasn't going anywhere. It was just kicking the can down the road till something major was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Because it just would. There is no, I don't know. It just,
you can't ignore the signs. You can't ignore all of that and then expect that it's just going to be fine and you're just going to get your way through. Eventually, there's a big hole that you fall through or something, and you either address it or things just completely fall apart. And yeah, I mean,
and as you're saying that, I was talking to my mom yesterday about that, and she said the same thing basically happened with her and my dad. And she said, however, she's like, I wouldn't have been able to have those conversations with your father like how you were able to have it with Robert. She said, because she couldn't get to the point where she knew something was wrong. She knew it wasn't the way she wanted it to be, but she didn't know how to even get my dad to even see her side, see that that was broken, see that there was, many things that needed to be fixed. And she said, so what happened was he left, right? He found another woman. Right. And so I said, yes. And that was my fear, was that I was going to be this perfect wife who doesn't exist because I was afraid my husband would leave me like my dad did to my mom. Mm-hmm. And so that was, it's either he leaves and that happens, or it's like, okay, no, we're going to get real and I'm going to just have to do this work on my own. And then now here we are. So like I said before, I don't know if this means that we will be together or we'll, be apart, but there is other ways to handle it and deal with it. And, this is just another approach. And, and my dad, I don't know if he'll ever reflect enough to know, like, to change or anything like that, because he is what he is. He is who he is. And then my mom did a ton of soul work after the divorce with my dad. So I don't know, but
it's interesting because those who are on the soul journey, they either do it in the relationship or outside of the relationship. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you're either, but those who want that journey, they're going to have that journey if you're seeking it. But if you can find a way to do it within the relationship and you have a partner who's willing to do it with you and stick with you as you find your voice and you get clear. I mean, because you do fumble at first. You try to say something, it comes out angry, or, you get caught up in a trigger. And so there is a patience required within the partners to allow for mistakes and grace and all of that stuff as you find yourself. But
which is like, in those vows, right? For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, for sickness and health. It's if you make that vow and you really commit to it, not only for yourself, but then if your spouse can, because I told this to Robert, I was saying, if you can see the value in it, who knows what it will reveal. But if you just give up and be like, I can't do this, this is way too hard, this is way too uncomfortable, that's okay too.
Right.
But and that's why I kept asking, like, are you still in this? Are you still wanting to do this? Because this is kind of just the beginning for you. I've done a lot of my work on my own, but this is now the beginning for you and then for us together. So, if you need to tap out, I understand. I'm not going to blame you because it's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. But I see the value, and I think he sees the value now, in that look how much growth we've had just in the last few conversations, the last couple of weeks, where it's very mature and there's no immaturity in it.
Right.
You know,
you're able just to speak honestly. And, I think that's what we have discovered in our marriage, is that you speak very honestly about your most difficult feelings.
Yeah.
About yourself and the other person.
Yeah.
And then to hear that without owning it and using it against the other person. Do you know what I mean? And that's been a very difficult process in our marriage, where it's like, you know what? Where you do say the things that I can't be around you.
Yeah.
Like, here's what I feel when I'm around you. And then, he says, when I look at you, I feel this way. And it's so hard to hear. But just to kind of be like, okay, well, that's where we are. How do we get through this? How do we look at it and let it grow us? Because we see that it can.
Yeah.
Rather than blaming and being like, well, I should have chosen somebody else who didn't feel that way.
Exactly.
You don't know that. You don't know.
Right.
So you
just. Well, yeah, like as you're saying, like the feeling safe. And I was telling my mom this the other day. I said, I need to be able to feel safe and trust that when I say these things, or when I'm honest about my true feelings, that you're not going to either run for the hills or blame me. So that's for me a huge, huge hill that I need to climb, because that was kind of how I felt with my dad and my stepmom. Was I did not feel safe, and I didn't feel that my feelings were valid. And so I'm now having that experience with my husband. And so, but now as an adult, I get to see that, hey, when you do this, or when this happens, I don't feel safe. And if I share this with you, I need to know that you're not going to take that and then use it against me and blame me.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I had to be very clear with him.
Re-trigger it and use it as a power tool. I mean, that's, the other thing. But then again, just stepping up and saying, you know this about me, and now you're doing it again. And here's what it makes me feel and think. What do you think about that? I mean, and again, it's the constant accountability. That sounds like drudgery, but it's not, because you're working in your relationship. You're building something. It's a building. It's like another brick that you're putting in your foundation when you show up in your relationship and you hold each other accountable.
Yeah. And I love it. I mean, I feel so much closer to him now, even though we're, as far as our journeys, our soul's journeys, even though that's a little bit further apart, but I feel closer with him now, where I have not felt like that with him even from the very beginning when we met, because we were both showing up as these, for me, I was young and just showing up, I had no idea. I was this wounded person, basically. And I was just like, please like me, please marry me. Somebody please marry me. Oh, you're going to marry me? Okay, great.
Totally.
And then for him, he was coming from a failed marriage that he never wanted to be divorced. And he ended up being divorced, and they were only together, I think, for 3 years. And so he was just kind of like, I don't even know if I want to get married again. And so, I mean, we're both coming from such wounded pasts and thinking it's going to work. And, it didn't for a really long time. And now it's just kind of like, okay, this isn't working. What do we need to do? How are we going to change this? And now it's just really being authentic with his feelings and my feelings. And I feel so much closer to him in that sense, where I would never have known this stuff before, because he so closed in, so closed up, just no emotion, no feeling. He's an accountant, he's very black and white and very, it's this way or that way, not that I'm blaming him, but that's just his way of dealing with stuff and his protection. And so, and I'm just not that at all. Like, I'm very open and honest and want to be, close and emotional and vulnerable and all this stuff. And so I wasn't allowed to be like that, because he couldn't handle it. And so now it's like, oh, now we're both kind of having to really show that side. And I'm loving that he's really showing me that side of him.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
good. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we've talked about before, it's not a destination. This is the journey.
Yeah.
And whatever the journey takes us on, hopefully it's a wonderful thing at the end where we're still together. But if we're not, it's still a wonderful thing because look how much we've grown.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't, you know, we've talked about this before, where you have to get to the point in your marriage where you're like, okay, you know what? My joy, my happiness, my sovereignty is more important than like hanging on to something that's fake, that's not working, that's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
I just want joy and happiness, even if it means not with you. And like understanding that you can let that go is the very beginning of building the relationship that you want. You know, we've both experienced that. I've heard that from other women. The second you can let go of the marriage you thought you were walking into, is when you can actually begin to build the marriage that you want.
Yeah. So true. So true. And, you know, not only for me, but then for my husband, like what he expected. Because I remember thinking early on in our marriage too, and I kind of asked, like, what is marriage about? What is this for? You know, what are we doing together? You know? So anyways, but good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you were taking care of yourself today, and you were doing some things on your own. And that's a piece of it too, right? I mean, like, really understanding what you need.
Yes.
And giving yourself that without guilt. And
you
said you were going to talk a little bit about that. So
yeah. So also this week was also thinking a little bit about our conversation we had before about that woman who said, you know, if you were given your perfect body tomorrow, would you know how to maintain it? And just really meditating a lot on that this week again. And then she had posted some stuff on Instagram that I was looking at, and there's such a big piece of it. And for me, the key is that self-care. The self-care has to be kind of number one, and then everything else kind of falls into place. Because how are you caring for yourself? How are you giving yourself that care that we sometimes expect from others, right? The hug, the validation with, oh, you look so pretty, or oh, you look skinny, or, you know, whatever that validation is that we're looking for external. How are we giving that to ourselves? And that's kind of hard to do. I mean, yes, you can hug yourself, which you and I've talked about. Like I've hugged myself recently, and I never had done that before, and just thought, why would I never do this before? You know, we have arms for a reason to hug ourselves, you know? And then part of her whole, because she talks about her lifestyle redesign, and it really is your lifestyle. And I remember thinking years ago with trying to do a new diet and all this stuff, and they're like, well, you have to change your lifestyle. And I was like, what does that mean, really? You know? And so she kind of goes in depth on what that really means, and thinking about your mornings, like how your morning routine literally sets off your whole day, and how you're caring for yourself. And I mean, for years, up until last year, I would reach over, grab my phone, start scrolling through the social media, stay in bed, be starving. I wouldn't listen to my body and be like, you're hungry, get up. And it's like, no, I don't want to eat right now. I need to look at this, you know, after another 15 minutes, or after I get through this page or whatever. And then I never made my bed. I never got dressed, especially like during the summer. This is an education, you know, you don't really have to get up and do anything. You know, I wouldn't get dressed, be in my pajamas all day, and then wonder why I was so unproductive, you know, but never wanted to make the step to do that. And so last year I started making my bed. I wasn't so good about the phone in the beginning, but now I try really not to look at it in the morning. I get up, you know, brush my teeth, And she says another thing is like, anything around your room, pick it up off the floor. So you're setting that example of, I care enough about my sleeping environment that I want to make it look nice. And I care enough about my body that I'm going to brush my teeth, hydrate. What are the other things she says? Like journal, meditate, pray, whatever you need to do. And then your movement, your exercise. But mine was always, it has to be exercise to lose weight. I'm going to punish myself because I ate a lot of dinner last night or whatever it may be. And just reevaluating and saying like, no, just movement, just moving your body. It doesn't have to be for a specific amount of time. It doesn't have to be hard. It's just moving your body. So those little changes are like, that's what that means for self-care. And I've tried to take it a step further now and saying, okay, what also brings me joy? Because I remember talking to you last year and being like, I have no idea what brings me joy, makes me happy, and what I want. I don't know, so now it's like my girls went out for the day with my dad and stepmom. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go get some lunch and I want to go to this place that I love. And I sat there and didn't, I used to eat by myself a lot and go to the movie theaters all the time by myself before I had married Robert. And I just really enjoyed that time by myself. I went and got an iced tea and just really was filling my bucket, my heart with what I love, no matter what, Robert's going to say, oh, well, you spent a lot of money today at lunch, or you spent a lot of gas going to the restaurant, or, why did you leave? You should have been home cleaning the house or whatever it may be, right? I mean, it's just all those shoulds again, all those things where externally we're hearing that you're not good enough, you don't deserve this. And it was just like, heck yeah, I deserve this. Who said I don't? And not to be in a selfish way by any means, in an egotistical way, but how can I care for myself? And then when I start caring for myself, the body and what it's supposed to look like will come when I'm caring for myself and I love myself enough to do these things for me. So
it's so good. I mean, because I think we've been taught that self-care should have a certain outcome, right? Yeah. So self-care should make you look better.
Yep.
Self-care should make your house look better.
Right.
You actually are doing something that creates a result.
Right.
And I think we're in this space right now where we're understanding that self-care might not bring a result right away.
Right.
Because there's so much to care for that hasn't been cared for in a while. It's like when you are cleaning out a shed. And it's like, it takes weeks. You got to pull everything out. It looks worse than it did. I think there's that process, and we don't value or respect that process where it's like, I'm sorry if it doesn't look the way you want it to. I'm sorry if, you can't put a value on what my self-care did for you today.
Exactly.
But it was fine for me. It's what I need.
Right. And then being okay with it.
Exactly. And own it. I mean, the other thing that I found is like, mine looks different a lot. Like I wake up and I'm like, what do I need today? And sometimes like on Tuesday, I was not feeling good. And it was like, you know what I want to do? I want to dive into a book and I want to lay in bed all day.
Yes.
I hadn't done that in ages.
Oh.
And I did it. And I like told my family, I don't feel guilty about it. This is what I really wanted to do today. It's what I needed. Yeah. And then I'm like, cool, But I mean, previously, a few weeks ago, my self-care was like, I really want to be creative. I was creating a room in my house. I was painting it. I was shopping for it. And I was energized by that. And so it looks different a lot if you go with the flow of what you need in the moment and not attached to like, it always has to look like this.
Right.
I think
Exactly.
we get like, oh, my self-care is shopping. My self-care is, getting my house, whatever it was in one moment, it might not be that in another moment.
Exactly. That's what's so fun too, is like, it could be completely different. But just then allowing it to flow. And like like you said, just not attaching to it, being like, oh, it has to be this way. No, no, no. Maybe I need something different that day. Maybe I need, to go get a Starbucks or something, or, whereas before you wouldn't have allowed yourself to do that because it's too expensive. It's this, that, whatever those shoulds are. Right. And so, and we don't know what it is, but if we're sitting and listening to our resonance, it'll tell us exactly what we need. And like you said, it may not look on the outside physically pleasing to other people, but that doesn't matter. It's like, when you are solid and know what you need, it will just be like pulsing out of you, right? And then people will want to be around you because of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to look like, because you and I've talked about this a lot, about like, oh, I don't want to go talk to that person, or they're saying they're doing all this healing and self-care, but they're overweight. I'm not going to go, they don't look like they're really healing,
Yeah. Oh.
But it's like, you have no idea. But then I think it just depends on our vibration that we're sending out to.
Mm-hmm. Totally true. I mean, just this, I was talking with my mom on Monday, and I was telling her how I was watching this little video of a guy who was like saying he was a healer, and he and his wife had been doing this healing, more vibrational healing, but like kind of trauma healing and things like that. And so it was the first time I'd come across him, and I was just kind of listening to his story. And he was an older man. He was overweight, and he had this ginormous goiter on his neck.
Wow.
And I was sitting there and I was like, okay, you are a healer, and yet physically it looks as though you're not healed. But is that true? Like, what am I holding on to?
Yes.
You obviously are assisting people.
Yeah.
You have a platform. People have been touched by you.
Right.
And I'm going to look at you physically and say, well, then that can't be true about you. And it's like,
right.
Why? What am I holding on to? And it's just an understanding of what we have to look like to be healed, to be a healer.
Exactly.
Like, that's arbitrary.
I know.
What does it have to do with anything about how God works?
Exactly.
And what he needs us to look like and be. I mean, I don't know. Just, again, questioning your assumptions.
Yeah.
And looking at them honestly.
Yeah. And it really made me think about that self-care, and how I have never my whole life given myself these things without guilt. And it makes me think, Tommy John, when says the thing about the happy donut's better than a sad salad, it's so absolutely true. And when we step back and really find out what am I doing for myself, and then not having any expectations, and then really just allowing the flow of it, and then who knows what will happen. But I mean, I've talked with you before about, like, I don't even know what my natural weight is for my body, because I have abused it so long. I don't know what I really want to eat. I don't know what I really should eat, all that stuff, because I've always thought I was in control of it. But that was without the self-care part. So now that I'm having the self-care part, it's almost as if it's not as forced or restrictive, and just allowing myself to be like, okay, if this is what I'm really needing today, I'm going to go get it. And like we talked about before, what level is it on? If it's not on the physical level, there's obviously maybe a spiritual level, a mental level, emotional level attached to that you are really needing to heal. And that's that self-care that is unseen.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. I mean, and I just think, again, and what I've been praying and meditating on in my mornings is just like, get me in alignment with all three.
Yeah.
Understanding if my physical environment, whether it be my body or my family or my situation, isn't what I want it to be, help heal the spiritual and mental pieces that are creating that. Because I'm not even aware. I am creating it. I own that I'm creating it. But I don't even get how I'm creating something that I don't want. And so help me get in alignment so that my physical reality can be manifested with alignment in God and in universal consciousness, right? I mean,
exactly.
So that they're all aligned. And so right now, I trust that that's what's happening here.
Right. I know.
I've been out of alignment. This is what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Out of alignment. And I'm working on getting in alignment.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of it is unseen.
Yes, exactly.
So, if we just are to judge a book by its cover, we have no clue. No clue. That's that 3D limiting, old way of looking at it. And there's so much more to it. It's not just that physical thing or that 3D
really
thing.
Freeing to think in that
way.
Yes.
To think absolutely.
Of it as bigger. And
what'd you say?
To think of it as bigger.
Yeah.
What you're seeing on the surface.
Yeah.
And then to understand that that's the case with everything we come across.
Yeah.
You don't have to hold tight to your judgments. You don't have to hold tight to your belief system. It's just kind of like, okay, hold loosely and enjoy things.
Yeah.
Because, that's kind of what we're called to do is be as children, right? Children have that kind of deep understanding. They don't have the sophistication because they don't have the knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they can enjoy life so much more, can't they?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it's like, is that what we're supposed to get to be like a child, to really let go of these beliefs, let go of these understandings that we think we have about how the world works, and just instead allow it to surprise us and not make any judgments on what we're seeing? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if that's what it looks like or that's how you get there. It is something that I wonder about.
Oh, for sure. Me too. So you were saying something about a book or something that you were reading.
Yeah. So like I said.
What's the name of it?
So it's by this author that's fairly unknown. I was talking with my mom on Monday, and she kind of mentioned this book, and she likes more Christian authors. And I am not a fiction reader. I enjoy reading nonfiction, spiritual books, things like that. And she's very much a fiction reader. So she told me about this book, and it sounded very intriguing to me. Like, oh, I wanted to see it. And with everything that's going on in the world right now, like there's so much divide. There's so much unknown. Everybody I talk to is going through something difficult. Craig's friends are kind of going through a lot of turmoil within their family about just making decisions about what to do with their kids. And there's just so many people going through difficult things. Yeah. And I feel like we're facing a lot of difficulties as a society and as a world. And it's so easy to get caught up in those details and kind of trying to understand why it's happening. Right. And this book, which is called The Rain, it's called The Rain. And it's but it's REIG. Yeah. So it's basically about after the tribulation, which is what Christians would say, like the end times, right? I don't think the end times is purely Christian. I think there are a lot of different people talking about the end times, talking about the apocalypse right now. There's a lot that's like resembling apocalypse right now that people are like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly.
So I definitely think it's in the consciousness of people. Yeah. But I wanted to read this book because my mom was saying it's basically taking after the end times and kind of painting a picture of what it could be like. Like, What are we shooting for? What do we want out of our society?
Right.
What are we expecting? So we're so caught up in like how shitty everything is right now.
Exactly.
It's really hard to get to the other side of it and be like, well, what do we think it would look like if it wasn't crappy?
Right.
If we didn't think there was a corruption, if we didn't think there were a bunch of lies and deceit everywhere, what would it look like?
Right.
And so this book really talks about, and it has more of a Christian perspective. So it talks about like Jesus's second coming, and the reign is the 1,000 years of Jesus being on the throne.
Yeah.
But what's really nice about the book is it doesn't push the Christian perspective. In fact, it really talks about how religion was used against the people.
Yeah.
It talks about how there was a lot of manipulation around the truth.
Yeah.
And deception, and people were very confused.
Right.
But more than anything, it really outlines how when Jesus comes back, the reign, things start to change in the world. So like immediately there's this sense of peace that people start to feel. And the main character in the book kind of notices it when he like sees a coyote in his yard, and he like throws him a scrap of something, and then he's taking a shower, and the coyote comes and brings him a towel, like a washcloth. And so there's like this symbiosis between the animals and the people that he's starting to notice. And of course, having been from like a war-torn, difficult time, it's hard to trust that. And so it really highlights the healing that has to take place on a mental and spiritual level, where you can actually begin to start accepting good things can happen. And how do you trust it after you've been abused? How do you trust it after you've been through such dark times? So I don't know. It was very
interesting. Did you finish the book?
No. So I'm in the middle of book 1, and there are 4 books, like I said. And so it's, but it's interesting because there are these immortals, right?
Yeah.
These people who come back with Jesus, who died during the war, during the all of the end times. And they come back, and they're basically ambassadors to kind of Jesus's world, this golden age.
Yeah.
And they can't be hurt. They can't be wounded.
Interesting.
They heal. They immediately heal all of the mortals, the people who are still there. They will heal them. And it's just
that's kind of like those med beds we talked about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of starting to really play in what kind of world are you looking for?
Yeah.
Not only that, but then also taking a step back and understanding everybody's role was necessary to bring about the highest good.
Yeah.
So even the ones that you thought were making the wrong choices, or that you disagree
evil or whatever,
or evil, you just kind of you can step back and understand it all had to be that way.
Yeah.
It all had to be that way. And to be angry with them or to hold resentment towards them, there's no place for that.
Right.
And so it's just helpful for me to kind of be like, if there's no place for that then, in the golden age, then why is there a place for it now? Like, why can't I just hold that consciousness now? Which is, okay, you're playing a part. I don't agree with you, or, you hold a different political stance than me or whatever, but we're all just creating this world that we all want.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't look like, going back to what we just said, it doesn't look the way we want it to.
Right.
And we disagree with the way that it's looking in this moment, because we don't yet understand what it's finally creating, what its end goal is.
Wow.
So I don't know, it just brought me a lot more.
Very interesting.
It's so interesting. The guy's name is Jeffrey McLean Jones, and all of his books are free.
Oh, okay. Amazon. Well, good. I just finished my book last night, so I need a new book to read.
So And so I've just really gotten it. It's just allows me to enjoy a brighter future. Do you know what I mean? Like, it allows you to start thinking those terms.
Well, I love that you said that too, because I hadn't really thought about, I mean, for myself personally, I made the statement about I wanted freedom and peace, you know, and that absolutely is in my world, right? Because that's how I choose to see the world. But yeah, like you're saying, like these people who hold these different parts or are playing these different parts, their vision of what the world is what they see it as. And that may be playing out for them, or maybe even playing out for us, but we get to choose then how we see it. Mm-hmm. Do we see it as a bad thing? Do we see it as a good thing? Do we see it as, you know, these are the end times or whatever it may be? We get to choose that. That's our creator. That's us being creator beings, and we get to see all that. So that's interesting. And I know Lori Ladd talks about that all the time, about we're all playing our part. So you can't get mad at somebody else. They're just in a different timeline than you are, or they're in a different space than you are, but you can't blame them. There's nothing to blame, you know, and just being accepting and compassionate and just allowing them to finally at their point, whenever they just choose to wake up, whenever it gets bad enough for them where they're seeing their world and being like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't be in this anymore. I want something different. Not necessarily physically, but it may change physically, which I hope it does. But again, there's those other unseen parts to it that they can absolutely change. So
for sure. I mean, and that is, sorry, just had someone walk in and they got
yeah.
But yeah, I just think understanding that we're just a part of something so much bigger, and our only job is to be peace, be joy, be attached to that higher perspective of what we're looking to create, and not worry about those who can't be there and do that.
Because that's not our job. Like, our job is not to be concerned that these other people aren't doing their part. They're doing their part just fine.
Yeah,
we can't control it. We can only control ourselves and what we see and what we choose, and then hold compassion for them. Because I love when Lori says this all the time, you know, we are no better off than they are just because we are awake or we have a little more of a vision maybe or whatever. Not even that. I don't even know what the word, but we are no better off than they are in the sense of we're better and you're not. If you look at it that way, then you're still in suffering, right?
Exactly. Right. I mean, and
that's not what God wants for us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the ultimate goal, is how do you go through this in the least amount of suffering? And I think it's with that higher perspective, that 5D perspective of like, okay, this is all just a symphony happening here.
Yeah.
And why would you get mad at the piano player because he doesn't play a violin? Or like, you know, why hold them as someone to blame? I mean, we aren't even that blame stops the soul and keeps us in a lower consciousness. So why are we continuing to live in that divide?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we continuing to believe that one group is holding us back?
Right. Yeah. And if you believe that, then you are being held back, right?
Exactly.
You know, or you can choose to be like, okay, that's what you're doing over there, but this is me over here. I'm not going to play into that. You know, I'm not going to buy into that and play in that whole idea. I get to choose differently. And that's that wonderful sovereignty that we have, is we get to choose. We get to choose how we see it.
Well, and it's so funny because we've talked about this before too, about having the conversation just with our spouses.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, dude, your energy is holding me back, right? And it's like, and it's like, again, to have the insight of like, no, it's not. No, you just needed to learn how to speak up, to ask for what you needed, to say this is how you felt, to share your experience.
Right.
And it's like, you finally did it. And then what happened? Like, as soon as I did it, as soon as I was able to say that a few years ago, it was like, oh, wait, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
know.
it was a shift of just
Yeah.
awareness and,
Yeah.
oh, wait, now I get it. It was just a
Yeah.
process for me to speak up
Right.
and actually say.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as you're saying that, I'm just thinking like a void is coming in, because that's how I would always, I was really like, okay, what are you avoiding? And every time it would come up with, I'm avoiding me courageously standing there and saying how I feel because I'm scared to death. It's not him. It's not anybody else that I'm avoiding. I'm avoiding myself, and then I'm not being authentic. And I have to be able to be like, okay, what are you running away from? Well, you're running away from yourself. So it's not going anywhere. So you're going to have to address it at some point. You know?
I mean, that's all it is. It's like, are you going to step into and say,
Yeah.
what you feel, what you need, what you believe,
Yeah.
and not apologize for it?
Right.
Or are you going to blame other people because you can't do that for yourself?
Exactly. Yeah. And then what world are you living in then? You know, like it's one or the other kind of, you know, what are you choosing?
Yep.
So that's so neat.
Yeah.
So you're on the first book, about halfway through.
Like, I
Are they
really
long?
recommend it. Yeah, it's a pretty long book, although it's on Kindle, so it can't really measure how long it is. But I think it's at like 380 pages or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, no, I just, you know, for anybody who is kind of wanting a more hope, kind of an idea of a world that we'd all love to live in, and then contemplate how actually quite difficult it would be to accept that world, because there's a lot of like, oh, I think I'd actually be against that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, this new king comes in, and it's like, oh, would I accept that, or would I be like, who the hell's this king? I want my sovereignty. You know what I mean? It's like you start to see how you can stay stuck. And you can see how people can stay stuck. And there's some hard themes. There's some hard themes in there that just help you question, kind of like get clear.
I love that.
On what you believe. But I just love the idea of entertaining a more hopeful future. So
yeah, for sure. It makes me think of your husband, where he's, a lot of the stuff is just like, and I'm not calling him out, but just like doom and gloom, like, oh my God, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And I remember being in that space too, and thinking like, oh, it's really going to be like this. And the thing for me, it was just so unempowering. I didn't feel in control at all. Right. And always left it up to these external things like, oh, well, once this happens, we'll be okay. Or once this person becomes elected, we'll be okay. Or once, you know what I'm saying? And it never can be. For me, what I've experienced is it never can be. And now with this awareness that I get to then choose that no matter who gets elected, no matter what happens externally with the government or our country, our world, whatever, I get to choose how I'm going to handle it.
Exactly.
It could look like the most disastrous thing in the world, but then I don't have to see it like that. I don't have to live with that and feel terrible. I can actually look at it and say, well, what are the good parts of this, right? How do I choose to live in it?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really like what I think the Buddha was trying to communicate, like suffering, that's suffering, it's a choice. We all might be experiencing the same thing, but it's whether you choose to suffer through it or not. I mean,
it's so true. It's so true. I never thought about it that way before until just kind of waking up with all this stuff, because we create our reality.
Yeah.
So
that anybody can look at you and be like, oh, that's horrible. And you can think, not really.
Yeah, that's not my experience.
Yeah, you might think it's horrible. You might be in suffering if this happened to you, but I'm not in suffering.
Yeah.
I have a perspective. I have a very bigger perspective that I'm a part of something, that this is growth. I just did a video on the obstacle is the way, because that's another thing that's just been flooding my mind. And I mean, that's it. It's like we identify an obstacle and we think because it's an obstacle, it must be awful. It must be
right.
wrong. It must be something that needs to be removed. And we miss the gift in it. And not to be trite, but it's like, it can be useful if you understand the purpose of the soul and what we're doing here, which is the evolution of the soul and the uniting, creating the Christ consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Which is just the vision that it's all okay.
Yeah.
One, that we're all just growing in our understanding of that. And each of these obstacles is actually a stepping stone to that Christ consciousness if you allow it.
Right. Oh yeah. It makes me think, we watched this movie this weekend. It's called The Secret. Did you ever read that book? It was like The Secret, it was like a popular book. I never read it, but we ended up watching the movie this weekend. It was so well done and so cute, and it was PG. There was no inappropriate parts. It was just like we could watch it as a whole family and have a conversation about it. And it was funny too, because the main character, the character in this story, he's, he just talks very kind of like how we talk. And every time he'd say something and he'd be like, well, that's not how I see it, or that's not what I've experienced, with like terrible things happening. And the girls would look over at me and be like, ugh, I know why you like this movie, Mom, So funny. But I love the message of it, because it's just kind of like what we talk about, which is, even though it looks terrible, you have no idea what God has in store for you.
Right.
It's not that terrible thing. It's just pushing you towards something greater, but you just don't know it yet. You have to be patient. You have to go with the flow. You have to see it as, what is this opportunity giving me? What's it showing me?
Yeah. And it's just a matter of understanding what fears are arising when you see that thing and go, okay, what limiting belief is this revealing about me?
Yeah.
And again, just an opportunity to look closely at what you believe about yourself as you head into this situation that is bringing up the fear, that is bringing up the doubt. I mean, it's a process, but you come out better on the other end.
Oh, I know. So much. And it's unexplainable. You can't explain it. But it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Just love it. And I think that's what keeps us going, right? Keeps us wanting to keep growing and learning and experiencing.
Because being fun, because it's like childbirth.
Yeah.
My God, it's so hard. And then on the other end, you have some understanding, you have some awareness, and you're like, oh my God, that was great. I'm so glad I went through that,
Yeah.
But it's always hard as you walk into it. But I was going to say, remember how I was telling you about that movie that I saw at Bookman's, that like video case that talked about the healer?
Yes.
Okay. So it is on Amazon Prime now. You got to go watch it.
I want to watch it.
The girls were scrolling through and I was like, wait. And we watched the movie. It's really cute. Again, another just good, feel good movie.
Yes.
It doesn't have anything bad in it. It's kind of opens your mind to like, what are we moving towards here?
Yeah.
What do we really want for ourselves? What are we capable of?
Yeah.
And I think that's what The Secret's all about too. It's like, what are we truly capable of?
Right.
And can we begin to entertain that? And how do we get there from this place that we're in now?
Right.
And it's only from higher consciousness. It's only from addressing this by not playing in the divide.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's so cool. Have you seen the movie The Secret yet?
I haven't seen that one. So
it's on Prime.
Documentary I saw years ago.
Okay.
But no, it's Katie Holmes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that was thunder.
No.
That's barking.
Is it thunder?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I didn't think we were gonna get any rain.
No, that's so weird.
I know.
So we're both hearing it at the same time.
Yeah.
But no, I'll have to watch that then.
Yeah, it's really good. It was funny because I was exercising in the morning and I was like, oh, I want to watch this. And then I loved it so much, we played it again that night with the whole family. And I was like, oh, it's so good.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'll watch that totally. So.
Yeah. And then the other one, yours is called The Healer?
The Healer, yeah.
Okay.
And it's about this guy who gets the gift of healing others, and he doesn't want it.
Oh, I love that.
I know, and he's just like, nope, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's just his journey through that.
Oh, cool. I definitely want to watch that. That'll give me something to do this afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
Yeah. Good.
Cool. I'm glad we got to connect. And,
I know. Yeah.
And I've been posting a lot of videos, but.
Have you?
Yeah.
I was going to this week, but then I chose not to. I wasn't like compelled to do it like I wanted to, but then I was like, eh. And then I'm glad I waited because we were able to talk about really what I was going to post.
Well, so process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Cool.
All right.
Well, you guys have a good weekend.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us. I don't know how long that went, but
I don't know either. I don't have a little thing up here, but
okay.
Anyway, we'll see. All right. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye.